For our next session, we have Adam Cole, VP of Business Technology at TangoCard. And for those of you who have been in the systematic community for a while, Adam is a very familiar face, and you kind of know what's in store for you today. He loves his dad jokes, so you guys are all in for a treat. And if you thought that self-service bots were not exciting, Adam is here to change your mind. So give it up for Adam.
Thanks. Thank you, Mary, and the team. It's a great conference. This is fun. I was here, as I know several of you were, in 2019, and we did that in person, and we've done virtual since. It's really fantastic, so I appreciate it. I'm glad to be back. They keep asking me to come back. I don't know why. But yeah, the dad jokes thing, I actually had the dad jokes before I became a dad, and so I just kind of, it worked out. It worked out. But yeah. It's good. All right. So today, going to be talking about self-serve experiences, customer experiences, right? And I have via bots. It's actually in smaller font. So as is thematic for systematic, right? The technology really should be the last piece, right? It's part of the solution, but really we want to create the experience, and so that's really where we started. And so we'll keep going here. No. Not going there. Why? I'm failing the test, folks. Anyway.
Big green button.
Big green. All right. I was using the pointer. Wasn't working. Here you go. Sweet. All right. So we're going to go through a quick rundown here, right? So we'll go through an introduction, give you some context, some foundation, and we'll talk about a challenge we had because, well, we like to start with problems so that we can actually go find a good solution to them. We'll talk about approach. We'll talk about a solution we implemented, how we got there, and then results, right? We did something. Why did we do it? What actually happened? What did we learn? So first, a little bit about TangoCard. If you don't know TangoCard, hopefully you do. You may know us. You might not even realize you know us. So we're in the rewards and payment space, right? So we have built a platform whereby you can manage your gift card payment programs, right? And this has enabled us to serve companies across the globe and enable, right, millions of gift cards to go out, right? And so we talk about a concept called reward value, which is basically kind of, rewards going through us, right, throughput, and we do over $1 billion annually, right? So we're a transactional business. And this spans, across, people say, what verticals are you in? Well, we help companies, businesses, incentivize behavior to drive outcomes. I think everybody here probably could do that, right? So really, we're across many verticals, many different use cases, many different rewards programs, right? So that's a little bit about TangoCard. My name's Adam. I actually will call out, so Walter here, I'll tell you about me, but I actually want to tell you about Walter first. Walter's awesome. Walter, unfortunately, could not make it today, but he is our director of support, and he's been with TangoCard for a number of years now, as have I. And fun fact, I actually interviewed Walter. He's awesome. I believed it then. I believe it even more strongly now. What I'd actually love, can we get a round of applause for Walter? Because I'm hoping he's going to watch this. Yeah. We appreciate Walter. Yeah, he's awesome. So I'm going to be telling a bit of his story and our story and how we got where we went, right? So my name's Adam. I've been at TangoCard. It'll be almost 8 years in January. When I joined, we were a startup, right? 25 people, everybody did a little bit of everything. Very common thread. Many of you have done this many times, right? So I've had many different positions. I'm at the point now where I've started teams, handed them off, and re-inherited them. So that's kind of where I'm at. Re-implementing projects, call center, did it, doing it again. So it's fun. And, both Walter and I work together very closely, and we're going to talk about how closely we work. So, one of the things that we did, and this started before COVID, was we recognized that our support system was siloed, right? So they were on an island, and the data they were collecting was okay, but not great, right? It's very common. Because when you're moving quickly, right, you're thinking about action, 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 action. But we knew that we were ultimately going toward a vision of getting everybody into one platform. So we'd already started, hey, we did an org migration. Folks are familiar with that with Salesforce, a lot of work, right? Sales, customer success, all these folks. How do we bring support into a mix? So we'd already started going in that direction, right? And so Walter and I worked very closely together. His team came in, and I want to emphasize this. You'll hear this a lot, and I think other people here presented, right, throughout the day here about data and why it matters. But I think if you think about it, not just as something that happens and, well, you hope it looks good after the fact, but really, right, as a focus, we want to get data for what? To take action, to what? Report, right? There's a lot of things you can do with it, but if you don't think about it in the beginning, it's hard to make it up later. So we thought about that a lot, right? We thought about that for getting something to the right place at the right time quickly, and then insights down the road. And so that's something we baked in. So when we stood things up here, right, we looked at how do we categorize? How do we track, right? Problems, resolutions. This stuff isn't rocket science, but you still have to do the work, right? So we worked very closely, business systems, support, right? What do we care about? What do we want to know? And we've invested the time and effort there. And then the other thing we did, and this is going to come back later, so remember it, is we also worked across the organization with product and engineering, right, to get some data integration, right? So for us, right, Walter's team is primarily talking to recipients, people who receive gift cards through some program because they did something, they earned something, right? And so for us, well, we know that most of them have a reference ID. Well, couldn't we look that up, right? So we had worked with our engineering team, with our product team, to see what we could do there, and that was something we rolled out. So all of that happened before something we all know, right? So COVID hit. This is 2020. And, you know, I think it affected probably everybody here in some way, personally, professionally, your business, lots of different effects, and we're still feeling all of these today, right? So for us, we as a company had a hypothesis years ago that digital rewards and incentives were the way of the future, right? There will always be physical use cases. Great, somebody wants a physical gift card. But for the most part, we saw digital. Well, it won't shock you to know that digital rewards and incentives became pretty doggone popular, right, when pandemic hit. And so it wasn't immediately clear to us that summer what the effects would be, but by the time the fall rolled around, right, we were starting to see some changes in behavior, in opportunities, and so this definitely affected not only how we all work and interact, but also what we started to see. So where did that lead us? Holidays, 2020, right? So Q4 is our busiest time of year. You think about rewards and incentive space, right? You're thinking about retail alignment, right? So the retail space and our space are very closely linked in terms of busy seasons, meaning right now we're getting ready for our busy season, right? So when the holidays started to hit, we started to notice some trends that were pretty disturbing to us, right? So, good problems, to be clear, good problems to have, but still problems nonetheless, right? So in our case, we had new use cases, we had more customers, and so we saw in 1 month a 400% increase in support contacts. 1 month, right? We had never seen a jump anywhere near that in the past. So, for us, we're looking at that in 1 month, and then, right, we're having to do what? Hire, right? So Walter's having to hire more people very quickly. Well, you can only onboard so many people at a certain pace, right? And we knew that wasn't sustainable in the long run. And so, during this time period, Walter and his team, what were they seeing? Well, they have SLAs, they have targets. They're slipping, right? And we take this stuff very seriously. One of our pillars is service. And everybody here knows if you don't have a good service organization, you're going to lose customers. And it's a lot harder to get new ones than it is to retain the ones you have. So for us, this was a problem. And so Walter kept hiring and hiring, but we knew at that time this is not going to work. And when we looked at the data at the end of it, we were up 54% over prior year. It's insane, right? but we're not going to grow the team every year by 50%. I mean, that's not sustainable. We're a volume business, right? So this presented a big challenge, and so one of the things that we said at that time is we have to do something. This just isn't going to work if we keep going, doing what we're doing, right? So remember we were talking about that foundation and all that data, right? Well, we had structured, not knowing there'd be a pandemic, I can tell you that much. We didn't have that much foresight. But, we knew that if we actually looked at what we were collecting, there had to be something in there. There just had to be. And so when we started digging into it, well, we found a number of things that were pretty interesting, right? So first, top 4 problems represented over 50% of the total case volume for this persona, right? This recipient persona. Okay, wow, that's a big one, right? So we're not talking about 20 different problems, we're talking about a small subset. And then of those, when we looked at the resolution data, right, what did it take to actually solve those problems? The top 3 were pretty obvious for why are we even doing anything? Why are we even talking to these folks? They could serve themselves if we empowered them, right? And there were different ways to empower, right? It wasn't one thing, but clearly there were some opportunities. And so when we looked at this and we sat around and we got, as we always do, right, we partner with folks. Last year I was talking about partners in product. Well, this is where we leverage our partners in product and engineering, right? So support, Walter, and I got together with our product team and we said, hey, what can we do? And what was great about it is, if you recall earlier, I mentioned those APIs, right? That data we integrated. And when we did that, we built it in a modular, reusable way. And so we said, well, wait a second. If we know this information and we know that most of our customers, recipients in this case, do know that key piece of information, right? That reference ID that identifies the reward they got with which they need help. Can't we do something with that, right? Why does somebody need to wait 2 days because we're backlogged, or 3 days because we're backlogged? The other thing too is, and this I emphasize, I bolded this one, right? We weren't even able to respond fast enough, and people were solving their own problems. So when you're solving your own problems, it's like, well, what are we actually doing? What value are we actually adding, right? So we came up with a target, and our target was, we said, okay, if we're being really conservative, maybe 30%, almost 1 out of every 3, but we actually thought we could probably self-serve away and create a better experience up to 50% of the inquiries we were receiving through this persona channel, right? So big thing for us, right? And we're talking emails primarily, right? So like most small companies, you start off, hey, here's support at TangoCard, right? Just email us. But you got to do something with that. So lots of opportunities. So what do? Built a vision, right? So we had a target, we had data, we knew, hey, we think we want to do something about this, right? But now we needed a vision to rally folks. So focus on self-service, right? That's really important. Nobody likes waiting. I mean, you think about it now, how many people, right, you go to as a consumer, you're dealing with some automated system, and you're probably getting help much faster than you did years ago, right? It's not always perfect, but you're getting help faster. And so for us, this meant a few things, right? So self-service, yes, but we also wanted to level up. I'm sure a lot of folks here, maybe your companies, maybe others, right, that you experience, they have chatbots, they have all this stuff, they have help centers, all this stuff, but it feels kind of disjointed, or it's really wordy, right? And so you end up in this situation where, I always hate it when I go to a vendor, a potential vendor, and I'm talking to one bot on this page, and then they're like, oh, testing out their support line, okay. I'm sorry, we can't help you. Go over here to our help center. It's like, really? Really? This disjointed experience is what you want me to take away from this? It's not great. It's not great, right? So for us, we wanted a consistent experience across channels. We had help center. We have applications, right? We sell choice products. So that means you have a redemption experience, right, where you can go in and say, oh, I got this $50 thing. I want a Best Buy card. I want a Target card. So we had a lot of real estate. And also reading is, nobody reads. I don't know how to tell you. I don't know if you saw the recent education assessments. It's not looking good, folks. all right? Reading, going away, right? But in all seriousness, we had help centers. We'd invested there. We've continued to invest there. But if you think about it, if you're a recipient and you're just trying to use a gift card, do you really want to read an article? Probably not, right? And we knew that. And so some of the things we were thinking about, it's like, well, do we really want to go that route? So, for us, we talk about build to last, right? So for us, what did that translate to, right? We wanted to say, okay, what do we have? What do we need? We have the vision, right? So we had those APIs, right? We talked about those. So we had built those. We were already using them. Great. Let's keep using them. Let's use them in a new way, right? We had experience with Workato using their API platform. So folks are familiar with that, right? That's where you can, without code, right, serve up, create API endpoints and expose them. So now we're starting to put the pieces together, right? We have our APIs. We have systems like Salesforce and NetSuite, right? In our case, we do have some physical fulfillment. So we do have some notion of pick, pack, ship for those of you who are familiar with that, right? So for us, we needed to bring it all together. And we knew we had the kit to do it. We knew we had that, or at least most of it. But what we didn't have was the experience side of it. We didn't have the thing that would tie it all together, like the rug in Big Lebowski, right? We didn't have that. So, yeah, there you go. So, right, we needed something. We needed a partner to help us. And so, we went out and tried to actually find that partner, right? And so we needed somebody who shared that vision I just talked about, because not everybody did. I can tell you that, right? So enter Lord of the Rings reference, right? So Fellowship of Gift Cards. This is Walter and me. We got the hairy feet. We're kind of haggard. He's been hiring like crazy. It's not working out. Okay, what do we do? We had the vision. We knew where we needed to go. So like Frodo, it's like, great. How do we get the ring there, right? So coalition around the goal, right? So we knew it was going to take more than Walter and my teams to go solve this thing, right? And so with the gap that we had identified, we said, okay, who else needs to be involved in this? I talked earlier about consistent brand experience. Well, you can't create a consistent brand experience if you're not talking to marketing and product, right? And what do they need? And so rather than just buying a point solution that did the one thing we needed it to do, right, we actually said, well, let's go find something that's actually going to work for more use cases, even if we don't tackle them right now, right? We didn't set out on this to go solve conversational marketing too, right? But we knew we could if we started here, right? So one of the things that we do internally is, we've done formal RFPs. Folks are familiar with that, right? Long process. But you don't need to do that for everything. And so we do what we call kind of RFP light. We have templates we use that are survey-driven, right? And that way we get some quantitative measurement. That way it's not, I'm sure everybody here has been in the debrief where you got the one person who just won't stop talking and they dominate everything. And then everybody afterwards is like, I didn't really think that was the right decision. Also, you waste time talking about that one that everybody really didn't like. It's like, why are we even talking about the one we didn't like? Let's just not talk about that one. So we do a thing with these surveys where we say, you know what, let's not even waste time with the low performers. Let's just spend time with the good ones. So we did that. We went through the process. We evaluated a bunch of these players, and we went with Ada. And we went with Ada because they shared our vision and because they had the technology platform to meet us where we were with what we already had, right? So for those of you who are fans of Tool, right, the pieces really do fit. I'm sorry, Tool reference. Anyway, great song. So we had to put it together, right? So we found that missing piece. We have the APIs. We have API platform. We know how to do this. So what do? Of the larger stakeholder group, we identified a small working group. And we got them together and said, basically, as many sessions as it takes, and it didn't take many, it took like 3, go map it out. Because if you don't know where you want to go, remember, right, Frodo and Sam and the friends, right? They knew where they were going. But if you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're going to build, you're not going to deliver anything good. And for us, we had sent a pretty audacious goal, right? We had said, look, what we're doing, right, you go back to that Q4 2020, what we're doing isn't working. We can't keep hiring at this pace, right? Walter's team is struggling. So we had set a pretty audacious goal. And so we're mapping out, right? We're doing these integrations. And we said, hey, let's turn this thing around in 1 quarter, right? Less than 1 quarter. And so for us, right, when we put it all together with this solution, and I want to emphasize the abstraction piece, right? What I mean by abstraction is the Ada platform, for example, you can go and integrate with every single one of your applications. But for us, we didn't need to do that, and we didn't want to do that. And there were benefits to not doing that. So we were able to abstract behind, let's say, a single endpoint. Hey, go look something up, hit these 5 systems, right? And that way, we only have to have one interface with the chatbot, right? So that was crucial for us. And so we actually did hit the target because we were very focused on what persona, chatbot flows, right? And who needed to be involved, right? So between product, support, business technology, we got it done, right? And we launched in March of 2021. And so that's a little picture of our lovely chatbot. It's evolved over time. Platform's gotten better. We've honed it, right? And so what happened? What were the results? Great, we have a solution, but if it doesn't work, who cares, right? So in our case, right, we saw some pretty dramatic results. So first, this containment, right? What does that mean? It means that of the folks who actually went to that chatbot, right, and engaged, meaning they didn't just click out of it and said, forget this, only 30%, less than 30% really, ended up needing to talk to one of our agents, right? Big change, right? If you remember, what did I say earlier, right? We were thinking conservatively 30%, maybe on the best case scenario, 50%, hit 70. We were surprised by that, right? Good surprise, but we were surprised by that. And so for us, this translated to some other key things when you look at KPIs, right? So 83% improvement in average first response time. That's huge, right? People have a much better experience when they actually do need help that they cannot get on their own. And then I mentioned before, right, that 54% year over year increase when it was not going well. Well, we saw, despite continuing to grow, a 10% decrease year over year when we looked at the data from this last holiday season compared to previous. Crazy. And unlike the previous period, where Walter was getting hit up like a piñata at a kid's birthday party with problems, right? Well, now, 0 escalations during holidays 2021, right? So Walter's pretty happy. And this also freed up his team to actually go and, first breathe. Second, maybe consider a career path that didn't just involve saying the same thing 5 times a day by hitting a quick text in Salesforce, right? So it really enabled his teams to scale and work on the things that we couldn't really automate or weren't in our MVP and things we could tackle later. So it's a really big deal, and it kind of blew us away. There were skeptics in the beginning. I'm sure everybody has somebody at their company who's like, the person in the room is like, this isn't going to work. Not going to work, right? We had those people, but we said, you know what, trust us. And when they saw this, nobody questioned it anymore, right? Because it spoke for itself. But it started with that data, right? So you can do it, right? This isn't just us. There's no magic here. There's no rocket science. We have a particular persona that we solve for. We've since solved for other personas we put in our applications, and we've continued to do that, right, over time. And that's been our vision. And so we extend this now into multiple of our products across different personas: prospect, customer, right, business customers, recipients. And so how did we do it, though, right? What should you take away from this? Data is important. Treat it as an outcome, right? Partnerships. None of what I talked about would be possible unless we had already had solid partnerships. None of it. Wouldn't have worked, right? We had trust. We had a track record, all of us together, right? Vision. If you don't have a vision, you don't have much, right? So you can have problems for days. We have problems. Told you about a big one. But we then took that and framed up a vision. That was crucial because once we had the vision, people were able to get around it. We were able to get sales, marketing, product, everybody in the same room to evaluate the platforms, the piece we were missing, and then go forward, right? And then the thing I really want to emphasize from an implementation perspective is abstraction, integration, right? So understand what it is you actually need to interface with, understand the flow, and then see where you can leverage what you have, and then bundle it up, right? So there's a lot of great platforms out there. I've mentioned Workato as one example with their API platform, but there's tons out there. And fundamentally, right, you want to get to an approach here. Here's the cool part. We didn't write a single line of code for this. Not one. Nobody did. Not even engineering, because we already had a lot, right? So you can do it. I have faith in all of you. I do. Quick plug, of course. We're hiring. If that sounded awesome and you're like, I want in on that, I want to work at a company that does that, we're still hiring. Everybody else is doing layoffs. We're not. We're still hiring. So please check us out. This is okay, I may have made this quote up, but seriously, everybody at TangoCard could say this. And we really do partner. I spent the last 2 days before this at an offsite with our revenue team. It was beautiful, a lot of alignment. We've got a lot of work to do, but I know we're going to get there. So with that, thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate you.
We do have time for a couple questions, so.
Adam, a question is, when you introduce self-service as a new channel for your customers to work with your service center, how do you handle your workforce change in the call centers and the service center? And how do you allocate them their time spent in different channels and skilling and everything?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, right, the workforce change, right? How did they approach it? What did they say about it? Yeah, so at first, there was some skepticism, right? Is this going to work, right? Can people actually self-serve? Do we have enough data? Is our hypothesis really correct that most people do know their reference ID, and when they enter it, we can do something about it, right? So first it was skepticism. Then we started to prove it. I think part of it, too, is we brought them along for a journey. This whole thing started with Walter and me and our teams. And, I think what he's done and we've done as a company is bring people along. This has been a theme throughout many of the talks today, but if you don't bring the right people in the room, it's not going to work. After it was implemented, one of the things that we had always wanted to do was engage them more on harder problems, solving those faster, and then ultimately where we really talk a lot about today is content. Because once you do this, you're not done. You're not done, right? You have this content, well, you have to keep it up, right? I talked about not reading. You got videos, GIFs, right? So this is where we can apply them and say, hey, you know what? You were wasting time saying the same thing over and over again. Now, why don't we write an article? Why don't we add some content to the chatbot? So that's a large part of what we did there. It's a great question. Anybody else? You ready to go do it? Yeah? Sweet. What's the best chatbot platform? Oh my goodness. Now, just plug data. I think what I will say is you need to be really clear on your criteria. And frankly, a lot of them are smoke screens, to be blunt. There's a lot of platforms out there. It's a super crowded space right now. But really evaluate and make sure that what they tell you they can do, they actually can do. Do a POC, right? We challenge a lot of our vendors to do this, right? But actually, hey, I have clear criteria. Let's see if we can go build this. Show us how it works. Take us behind the scenes. Show it to a BSA. Show it to a developer, right? Make sure it passes the sniff test. Because a lot of them, when we did that, they were like, well, you could do that if you wrote to our API. And I'm like, yeah, that's not, we don't want to do that. So that was really key. So I don't know if I could tell you the best one. We like Ada. I would encourage you to check them out. But there are others now that do this. And I think one thing that's changed in the last year is more platforms now are doing what Workato's done for years, which is basically bring your API, right? And you don't have to write code. So there's a lot out there. Also, the last thing I will say, though, too, on that is pricing. We're transactional. Some of the pricing models just didn't work out for us. It was way too expensive per contact. And when you're talking about a recipient-type persona, the math just didn't add up. So, yeah. we pumped? Ready for Bill Nye? Feel like can I introduce Bill Nye? No, I'm just kidding. This is,
We still got one more session to go.
I was trying to. I'm excited. I'll admit it.
Well, if we could get a big round of applause for Adam.
Thank you.